Under the glowing silver lights of the America's Got Talent stage, Lyra Santos stepped forward with slow, careful breaths, trying to quiet the storm inside her chest. 19 years old, thin from long days of work and nights of singing, she carried with her more than just a dream. She carried the weight of every sacrifice her mother made in the crowded streets of Tondo, Manila. She had flown from the Philippines with a single borrowed suitcase, 3 pairs of clothes, and a heart overflowing with hope. As she stood center stage, her shoes slightly shaking on the polished floor, she felt the contrast between this grand hall and the noisy corners of Roxas Boulevard where she used to perform. Back home, she sang beside the neon glow of jeepneys, with the smell of street food and the echo of tricycles mixing with her voice. Here, everything was silent. Everything was watching. Everything was waiting. Her palms were sweaty as she gripped the microphone. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, curious, expectant, doubtful. She saw the judge's table in front of her, shining under the spotlight. Simon Cowell leaned back, arms crossed, looking at her with a mix of skepticism and mild interest. His expression didn't intimidate her. It reminded her of the many strangers who doubted her back home. How many times was she told that dreams like hers were only for the lucky few? How many nights did she stare at the Manila skyline, singing quietly to the stars, believing that hope was enough? She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. Her heart thumped so loud she wondered if the microphone could pick it up. She thought of her nene, who stayed up all night before Lyra's flight, cooking her favorite arroz caldo and telling her, "Anak, kayat auto mangiari, ipagmalaki mo kung saan ka galing." Those words wrapped around her like a warm blanket now. She lifted her eyes, letting the bright lights blind her just enough to forget the size of the room. She had performed in front of strangers her whole life, families buying dinner, workers going home, tourists passing by, but this was different. This stage felt like standing on the edge of a new beginning. The host's voice echoed faintly from behind, announcing her name and hometown. From Manila, Philippines, Lyra Santos. The moment her city was spoken aloud, she felt a surge of pride, like the entire Philippines was standing behind her, cheering, pushing her forward. She inhaled slowly, filling her lungs with courage. This wasn't just her dream. It was her country's voice she was carrying. She faced the judges fully now, forcing a smile despite the tremble in her knees. The silence swallowed her. Even the audience seemed to hold their breath. Simon raised an eyebrow, waiting for her introduction. She leaned into the microphone and spoke softly. "Good evening. My name is Lyra, and this performance is for my nene, and for everyone in the Philippines who keeps believing even when life gets hard." A soft murmur traveled through the crowd. Something about her tone, gentle but steady, nervous but sincere, captured their attention. Lyra felt her throat tighten, but she refused to let emotion drown her. She closed her eyes for a moment, blocking the cameras, the lights, the judges. She imagined the streets of Manila, the warm dusk air, the familiar sound of her mother's voice calling her home. She imagined the people she used to sing for, their tired faces softening whenever her voice reached them. Those memories were her strength. As she opened her eyes again, she found Simon watching her more closely now, as if sensing there was something deeper inside this young Filipina standing alone on the world's biggest talent stage. Lyra took one last breath, lifted the microphone to her lips, and prepared to pour her entire heart into the first note that would change her life forever. The first note had not even fully formed when a sudden hush swept through the entire auditorium, as if every sound in the massive AGT theater had been pulled into Lyra's trembling chest. The moment her voice escaped, soft, clear, and almost fragile, Simon Cowell's posture shifted instantly. He had been leaning back, arms crossed, the picture of skepticism, but now he straightened in his seat, eyes narrowing in focus. There was something in her tone that did not match her shy appearance, something honest and ancient, shaped by struggle and tenderness. Lyra felt none of this. All she felt was the familiar sting of emotion rising from her throat, the same feeling she got whenever she sang on Manila's street corners, with nothing but determination and borrowed courage keeping her standing. As the melody opened wider, her voice grew steadier, rising like a breeze blowing through the narrow alleys of Tondo where she had grown up. Each note carried the stories she never had the chance to speak, stories of long nights selling food, of walking home in the rain, of her mother's tired but hopeful eyes. The audience leaned in without even realizing it. Some placed their hands over their hearts. Others stared at her, as if trying to understand how such depth could come from a teenager who looked so delicate under the bright lights. Simon exchanged a quick glance with the other judges, but his eyes returned to Lyra immediately. Something about her voice felt like a plea, a prayer, and a celebration all at once. It was not the typical polished, trained performance AGT often saw. It was raw, almost haunting. As she reached the first small high note, there was a slight crack in her voice, beautiful, vulnerable, real. Instead of ruining the moment, it deepened the emotion, pulling the entire room into her world. It was as if the echo of Manila's night air had followed her into this giant hall. A woman in the front row covered her mouth, already crying. A man in the balcony wiped his eyes, even though the song had barely begun. Lyra, unaware of how deeply she was affecting them, only focused on breathing through her trembling nerves. She felt her heartbeat sinking with every word she poured out, each one carrying the weight of love, sacrifice, and dreams too big for the life she came from. Midway through the performance, Simon leaned forward again, this time placing his elbows on the table. He studied her with the intensity he reserved only for the rarest talents, the kind that stunned him out of his usual criticism. "Unbelievable," he whispered under his breath, not loud enough for most to hear, but genuine enough that the cameraman closest to him reacted. Lyra pushed into the song's emotional climax, her voice soaring effortlessly now, as if every doubt she had carried since childhood had finally loosened its grip. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to cry. She had promised herself she would finish the song for her Nene, no matter what. The emotion in her voice wrapped around the entire room like a warm embrace, the kind that makes strangers feel connected without knowing why. By the time she reached the last long note, the auditorium was trembling with energy. People were gripping their seats, nodding, whispering, praying. Simon's face softened completely. The disbelief had turned into admiration, deep, undeniable admiration. When the note finally faded, the silence that followed was not empty. It was full, thick with awe, as if everyone needed one breath to recover from what they had just felt. Then, without warning, the entire audience erupted into cheers, and applause so loud that Lyra flinched in surprise. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, overwhelmed. What she didn't know yet was that Simon Cowell was seconds away from making a decision that would change the entire trajectory of her life. Golden confetti had not yet fallen, but the air already felt charged with the electricity of something extraordinary about to happen. The final echoes of Lyra's performance lingered in the vast AGT theater, like a memory refusing to fade. She stood frozen in place, clutching the microphone with both trembling hands, her chest rising and falling as she tried to understand what she had just done. The applause thundered around her, wrapping her in a wave of sound so powerful it nearly pushed her backward. But in the middle of the chaos, her eyes found the one face she feared the most, Simon Cowell's. He wasn't clapping. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't moving. He was simply staring at her, deeply, intently, as if trying to read the truth behind every word she had sung. And that stillness terrified her more than silence. Seconds passed like entire minutes. The other judges exchanged excited looks, but they too waited, sensing that Simon wanted to speak first. Lyra swallowed hard, feeling her heartbeat pounding against her ribcage like it was trying to break free. She thought of her mother, thought of Manila, thought of the countless times she sang beside the streets with nothing but faint city lights and faith to guide her. She wondered if she had gone too far, if she had let her emotions spill too openly. But then Simon finally leaned forward, placed his hands flat on the table, and let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh of disbelief. "Lyra," he said, and the entire room quieted instantly. "I don't know where to begin. That wasn't just a good audition. That wasn't even just a great one. What you did tonight," he paused, searching for the right words, "was pure magic." Lyra blinked quickly, tears threatening to fall. Simon shook his head slowly, as if still processing what he had witnessed. "You walked out here looking so nervous, so unsure, and then you opened your mouth and gave us one of the most honest, powerful performances we've seen in years. Your voice, it carries pain, hope, and beauty all at once. And that is something no training can create. That is something born from life." Lyra felt her legs weaken. She bit her lower lip, trying to keep her emotions from flooding out, but Simon wasn't done. "The Philippines should be incredibly proud of you," he continued. "You didn't just represent your country, you honored it. Every note you sang felt like a piece of your heart, and that is what makes a true artist." The audience roared in agreement, chanting her name, stamping their feet. Lyra pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed, dizzy with gratitude. Then Simon stood up. The movement sent a ripple of anticipation across the room. He looked at her with a warmth rarely seen from him, a spark of certainty burning in his eyes. Lyra felt her breath hitch. She had seen this moment on TV so many times, but never once imagined she would be the one standing beneath the spotlight when it happened. Simon reached toward the golden buzzer. The world seemed to slow as his hand hovered above it. Lyra's vision blurred with tears. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself to stay upright. When Simon finally pressed down, the theater exploded with light, music, and showers of shimmering gold. Confetti rained over her like a blessing from above. She dropped to her knees, overcome by the magnitude of the moment. "Para ese nenekeo, para ese Pilipinas," she whispered between sobs, her voice shaking but proud. And as the golden rain surrounded her, she knew this was the moment her life changed forever.